You haven't heard a single word yet, and you're already leaning in too. Your body did that, not your manners, not your opinion of the person, not any decision you would defend out loud. Your body moved toward information about another human being the way a hungry animal moves toward smoke. That pull is old. It is older than the alphabet, older than farming, older than every rule you were ever taught about what a decent person talks about. And you have been apologizing for it your entire life. You start sentences with, "I shouldn't say this." You feel a small, ugly flick of shame after a good, long conversation about somebody who wasn't there. Somewhere along the way, you are told that small minds discuss people. By the end of this, you will know the one thing gossip did that no other animal's voice on this planet could do, and you will know why yours is now aimed almost entirely at people who will never learn your name. Start with the hands. Go and watch monkeys for an afternoon. Chimpanzees, baboons, macaques, any of them. You will see them spend an enormous share of the day picking slowly through each other's fur. It looks like cleaning. Some of it is.
But the amount is wrong. An animal that only needed to be clean would be finished in minutes. Instead, some primates spend up to a fifth of their waking hours doing this, and they are extremely particular about who they do it with. Because it is not hygiene, it is bookkeeping. Every session is a small contract. I spent my morning on you, you now owe me a morning. When a fight breaks out, or food runs short, or somebody needs backup, the fur remembers who paid whom. Now here is the problem your ancestors ran into. Grooming works beautifully in a small band. Past a certain size, the arithmetic collapses. Every extra member is another relationship you have to maintain physically, with your hands, one body at a time, and there are only so many hours of light. The primatologist Robin Dunbar noticed that across primate species, the larger the group, the more of the day gets swallowed by grooming. Then he did the obvious thing and ran that line out to human-sized groups. The number he got was absurd. To hold a group of 150 together by touch alone, you would have to spend something close to half of every waking day with your hands in somebody's hair. You can't. Nobody can. You would starve. So, what replaced the hands?
Dunbar's answer, still one of the best explanations anyone has offered, is that the voice did. Talking is grooming that does not need to touch. It works at a distance. It works while you are walking, while you are carrying something, while your hands are busy with a fire or a hide or a child. And it works on more than one person at a time. Hands groom one. A voice grooms a circle. If that is what talking is for, then the content of talking should give it away. It does. Dunbar and his colleagues did something almost comically simple. They sat in cafeterias and trains and bars and quietly recorded what the people around them actually talked about, unprompted, in the wild. It was not politics. It was not ideas. It was not work, mostly, and it was certainly not the weather. Roughly 2/3 of all of that conversation was social. Who did what? Who is with whom? Who behaved badly? Who is struggling? Who can be relied on? 2/3 of everything. Every generation of moralists has told your species to stop doing this, and your species has carried on doing it with most of the words it has ever spoken. Now picture one specific night. The anthropologist Polly Wiessner spent decades among the Hansi in the Kalahari, and she did something unusual. She wrote down conversations not only by day, but after dark.
The daytime talk was hard-edged, land, arguments, complaints about who was not pulling their weight, criticism, negotiation, the sharp, practical business of getting food into people. Then the sun went down, and the fire was lit, and the talk changed almost completely. Not slightly, almost completely. By firelight, hands finally still, faces lit orange from below, the overwhelming majority of what people said turned into stories about absent people, about people who had died, about relatives 4 days walk away, about who had done something extraordinary, or shameful, or funny, in another band a season ago. Same people, same day, two entirely different machines running. The fire bought them hours no other animal had, hours when it was too dark to work and too early to sleep, and the predators were held back by the light. And your ancestors spent those hours talking about other human beings. That is the raw material. Now here is the part that rearranges the whole picture. You probably assume gossip runs downhill, that it is a weapon the strong use on the weak, the popular on the unpopular. In the societies that most resemble the ones your ancestors lived in, it ran the other way. It pointed up. Christopher Boehm went through the record of mobile hunter-gatherer bands and found the same patterns surfacing again and again. The group does not let anyone rise above it. Not by law, because there is no law. Not by force, because the man they are worried about is usually the strongest one there. They do it with talk, mockery, mimicry, a joke landed at exactly the right moment. And above all of it, the slow, steady agreement built up behind somebody's back about what he is really like. Among the Juawansi, there is a custom the anthropologist Richard Lee described after learning it the hard way. A hunter drags back a huge animal, and everyone in camp tells him it is pathetic, skin and bones, barely worth the walk. They do it deliberately, and they do it to the best hunters most of all, because a man who is allowed to feel like a big man starts behaving like one. That is what your ancestors were doing with their voices, not idle chatter. A leaderless, permanent, distributed negotiation about who is behaving well, the only weapon a band of 40 people has against a bully, and a large part of the reason those bands stayed as equal as any human societies have ever been. Your ancestors did not tolerate gossip, they ran on it. And now the thing no other voice could do.
In the lab, this shows up almost too cleanly. When people watch somebody cheat in a game, many of them will pay a real cost out of their own winnings simply to send a warning to the next player. They do not get that money back. They send the warning anyway. And in groups where people can pass on reputations and shut out the ones who take advantage, cooperation climbs and then stays up. Look at what that actually means. You do not have to personally test a stranger to know how that stranger behaves. You can inherit the results of everybody else's testing. Their reputation arrives before their body does. Almost nothing else alive can do that. A chimpanzee mostly has to learn every other chimpanzee itself, one encounter at a time. You can trust a person you have never met, carefully and provisionally, but genuinely, because information about that person traveled further than the person did. That is gossip. That is what it was for. Nearly every large-scale human thing you have ever benefited from is sitting on top of it. So why does yours feel so cheap? Because the machinery is still running at full power, and almost nothing you feed it is real anymore. Think about the people you currently know the most detail about. A celebrity's divorce, a stranger's kitchen, somebody being taken apart online today by 100,000 people, not one of whom will ever meet him.
None of them can be affected by what you know. None of them will meet you. Nothing you learn changes how anybody treats anybody, and nothing comes back the other way. In a band, gossip was a loop. You gave information, you got information, and the person being discussed was somebody you would be sitting beside tomorrow, which kept it roughly honest and kept it bounded. What you have now is an open pipe, enormous volume in, nothing out, no correction, no consequence, no next morning. And meanwhile, the actual people, the ones in the room, the ones on the other end of the phone, get the weather, traffic, weekend plans, the safe talk, the talk that keeps everybody politely far away. You were told that serious people discuss ideas, but you were built by 100,000 years of firelight to discuss people, and something in you goes quiet when it is not allowed to. So the next time you lower your voice and feel that small flick of shame arrive right behind it, let it go. That impulse is not a defect in your character. It is the oldest social technology you own, running perfectly, in a world that hands it almost nothing worth holding. Just check where you are pointing it, at somebody you will see tomorrow, or at a stranger who will never know you existed. Someone leans in and lowers their voice, and you lean in too.
You are not being small. You are doing the exact thing that let a species of soft, slow, breakable animals trust one another faster than they could ever be introduced.
You are looking at a flame. Maybe it's a campfire, maybe it's a fireplace, or a gas ring on the stove, or one candle on a table nobody has cleared yet. The flame moves and you follow it, and somewhere in the middle of that, without deciding to, you stop thinking. Your shoulders come down, your jaw lets go. Someone says your name and it takes you a full second to come back into the room. Nobody taught you to do that. That pull is older than farming, older than every language on Earth, older than your species. It has been happening in the dark for more than 1 million years, and your body still runs the program tonight, in a heated room, in a city, with the door locked. Here is the part that should bother you. You already hold a light in your hand almost every night. It glows, it flickers. You stare into it in the dark for an hour before sleep, exactly the way your ancestors stared into theirs. And you do not come away calm. You come away wired and hollow, and somehow more tired than when you started. Your ancestors had something that switched their whole nervous system off at the end of every single day. You replaced it with something that does the opposite, and nobody told you that a trade had been made. Start with how old this is, because the age of it is the whole argument. Deep inside Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, far past the point any wildfire could have reached on its own, there are burned bones and layers of ash. Recent work on that cave pushes the fire use there back beyond 1 million years. That is not a lightning strike sweeping through an open plain. That is fire carried inward, on purpose, into the dark, and then kept alive. At a lakeside site in Israel called Gesher Ben Not Yaakov, burned wood and burned seeds and cracked heat-shocked flint sit clustered in small patches, roughly 790,000 years old. And the clustering is the whole point. The burning is not smeared across the site. It happens in spots. Somebody chose where. Then, at Kesem Cave, also in Israel, there is a hearth about 300,000 years old that was used again and again and again in the same place across generations. Ash resting on ash, thin as pages, a fixed address for the fire. Sit with what a fixed hearth actually means. Not warmth, not safety, not light. It means a place everybody knows to be after dark. Your species invented the meeting point before it invented the wheel. So what happened at that meeting point? The famous answer is food. The researcher Richard Wrangham has argued for years that cooking is the thing that made us human, that heat breaks food down before your gut has to, so a smaller intestine and a larger, hungrier brain suddenly become affordable. It's a strong idea. Much of it holds up. But notice what it explains. It explains your stomach. It explains your skull. It does not explain, even slightly, why you go quiet when you look at a flame. For that, you have to look at what people actually do around fires, and someone did. The anthropologist Polly Wiessner spent years with the Juohansi in the Kalahari, and she did something nobody had bothered to do. She recorded conversations by time of day, daytime talk and firelight talk, side by side, the same people, over 170 conversations. Daytime talk was almost entirely business. Who was going where, who did not share what they promised, complaints, arguments, land, hunting plans, and a steady current of criticism aimed at anyone getting above themselves. It was useful. It was also a little exhausting. Then the sun went down, and the same mouths did something else. At the fire, the talk turned. It went to stories, to people who weren't there and people who were dead, to singing and to the spirit world, and to long tellings about ancestors nobody in that circle had met. The arguments of the afternoon got smoothed over rather than prosecuted. Nobody was solving anything. Everybody was imagining together. That is the twist, and it is easy to read past it, so slow down here. Fire's real gift was not heat. It was not eating the cooked meat. It was a fourth block of time in the day that had no work in it. Before fire, the day had 3 parts, and all 3 of them were spent staying alive. Find food, eat, sleep. The dark was simply a lid closing. Fire pried the lid up and made a room under it, 3 or 4 hours long, that could not be used for foraging, could not be used for hunting, could not be used for travel. Hours with no possible productive use. And into that useless space, a species poured stories, music, gossip about distant relatives, laughing, and the slow repair of the day's small injuries. Everything you think of as culture grew in the one part of the day when nothing could be achieved. And your body learned to expect that room. This is the part that has actually been measured. A researcher named Christopher Lynn ran a set of studies with more than 200 adults, and he took the fire apart to see which piece was doing the work. Some people watched a fire with the sound turned off. Some watched the same fire with the crackle left in. Some got a control with no fire at all. Then he checked their blood pressure. The muted fire did very little. The fire with its sound in it brought blood pressure down, and it brought it down further the longer people sat with it. The effect was strongest in people who fall easily into absorbed states, and strongest in the people who lean most toward others. So it was never the picture of a flame. A photograph of fire is not the thing. What calms you is the whole animal experience of it. Moving light, and the popping and radiant heat on the front of your body while your back stays cool, and the shape of other people sitting in a ring at the edge of it. Your nervous system is not reading a flame. It is reading a situation, and the situation says, the day is finished, everyone is here, nothing more is required of you. Now look at the thing in your hand. It has the flicker. It kept exactly one piece and threw away all the rest. light with no warmth, sound that arrives sealed inside your ears instead of filling a space around you, faces but no bodies, and none of them are actually in the room, information where the story used to be, and instead of a circle of people who all agreed the day was over, one person, alone, horizontal, in the dark. Then there is the last difference, and it may be the worst one. A fire ends. It burns down whether you want it to or not. The talk gets slower as the light gets lower, and eventually there are only embers, and the ending is decided by physics and not by your willpower. Your feed has no embers. It cannot burn down. There is no point at which the wood runs out and your body is allowed to believe the day is complete. So when you're lying there at 1 a.m, unable to power down, knowing exactly what you should do and doing the other thing anyway, understand what is actually happening. That is not a character defect. That is not weak discipline. You are a creature whose off switch was never installed on the inside. It was external. For 1,000,000 years it sat in the middle of camp. It was made of wood. It was tended by whoever was awake, and it went out on its own schedule. You never needed the strength to end your own day. You just had to sit near the thing that ended it for you. Then, in about 2 generations, we took the fire out of the middle of the room, replaced it with a rectangle that never goes out, and started calling the resulting exhaustion a personal failing. The inheritance is still there, though. That's the good news, and it is smaller and easier than the wellness industry would like it to be. It doesn't take a campfire. A candle counts. The gas ring counts. A fireplace, a fire pit, a stove flame with the kitchen light off. What seems to matter is that it moves, that you can hear it, that it warms the front of you, and that if at all possible, somebody else is sitting there too, not fixing anything, talking about people who aren't in the room. You are not treating a symptom when you do that. You are giving a very old body the one signal it has been waiting all day to receive. So tonight, if you get the chance, let something burn. Sit closer than you need to. Let the talk go somewhere useless. And when the moment comes that you stop thinking and your shoulders drop, and it takes you a second to hear your own name, don't apologize for drifting. Nobody taught you to do that. Something 1,000,000 years older than you already knew the way home. Your throat tightens, your eyes sting, and you look away, fast, so nobody sees. You are one of 8 billion members of a species that leaks salt water from its face when it feels too much. No other animal on Earth does this. Not the chimp, not the wolf, not the elephant. Only you. And somewhere along the way, you were taught that this ancient, uniquely human thing is a weakness to hide in a bathroom stall. But here's the loop I want you to hold until the end. Your tears were never meant to be private. They were built to be seen. And once you understand why, you may never apologize for them again. Let's go back. Every animal with eyes makes tears. This is not the special kind. These are basal tears, a thin film that keeps the eyeball from drying out, and reflex tears, the flood that comes when you chop an onion or dust blows in. Your dog has these. A crocodile has these. They are plumbing, nothing more. Useful, invisible, forgotten the moment they dry. But somewhere in the long stretch of your evolution, as your ancestors' brains ballooned and their societies grew tangled and complicated, something new appeared, a third kind of tear. A tear triggered not by wind or grit, but by feeling, by grief, by overwhelm, by a tenderness so large the body could not hold it in. No one is completely sure when the first emotional tear was shed, but we know it is old, and we know it is only yours. Charles Darwin puzzled over it in 1872 in his book on the expression of the emotions. He noticed that weeping seemed to serve no obvious survival purpose, and it bothered him. Why would evolution keep a trait that looks so useless, so fragile, a leaking, blurring, sound-making display right when a creature is at its most vulnerable? Here is the answer he was circling. Picture the world your ancestors lived in. No writing, no hospitals, no words for most of what churned inside a person. You lived in a small band, 40 or 50 people, and your entire life depended on them not abandoning you. A human alone on the ancient savanna was a human who did not survive the week. Not the cold, not the dark, not the things with teeth that hunted in it. Now imagine one of them is in agony. A mother has lost a child. A hunter comes home broken and empty-handed. There are no words deep enough, and even if there were, half the band might not share them. So the body finds another way. The eyes fill, the face crumples, and across the fire, without a single sentence spoken, everyone else knows. That is what a tear is. It is a signal, a flare fired up from the body when language runs out. And here is the part that will stay with you. Emotional tears may be chemically different from the tears an onion pulls out of you. Researchers who study crying, like the Dutch psychologist Ad Vingerhoots, have spent decades on this strange human act, and one recurring idea runs through the work. Emotional weeping is not really about the water at all. It is about the message. A tear is a white flag your body waves that says, without shame, without a word, I cannot carry this alone. Now here's the twist, the thing that flips crying from a flaw into a piece of genius. When you weep hard, your vision blurs. The world goes soft and swimming, and for a moment you cannot see clearly, cannot track a threat, cannot fight, cannot flee. One evolutionary researcher, Orrin Hassan, argued that this is not a bug, it is the whole point. Blurred, defenseless eyes are a costly, honest signal. They tell the people in front of you, I have lowered my weapons. I am no threat. I am handing you my guard. It is almost impossible to fake, and that is exactly why it works. A tear is trustworthy precisely because it leaves you undefended.
And there may be something happening inside the water itself. The chemist William Frey spent years collecting human tears in his laboratory, and he found that emotional tears are not identical to the reflex tears an onion causes. They carry more protein. Some researchers have wondered whether crying is, in part, the body flushing something out, though the science there stays cautious and unfinished. What we can say plainly is this: your body treats the tears of grief as a different substance from the tears of a chopped onion. It knows the difference, even when the world tells you there isn't one. And it starts on your very first day. The first thing you ever did, before you could see a face or hold a thought, was cry. It was not sadness. It was a signal, thrown out into the world to a mother you had not yet met, and it worked. She came. She always came. That is the deal your species has run for 2 million years. One of us breaks open, and the rest of us move toward the sound. You have been fluent in this language since before you had a name. Think about what that does to the people around you.
When you cry in front of someone, something in them softens. Their guard drops to meet yours. The urge to compete, to judge, to keep score, quietly dissolves, and an older urge takes its place. Come closer. Help. Stay. Your tears reach into another person and pull gentleness out of them, almost against their will. That is not weakness. That is one of the most sophisticated social tools evolution has ever built, and you were issued it at birth. A snarl pushes others away. A tear pulls them in. For your ancestors, that pull was everything. A person who could signal, I am hurting, I need you, was a person the group gathered around. A person who could not, who hid every wound behind a flat, hard face, was a person slowly drifting to the edge of the firelight. And the edge, back then, was not loneliness. The edge was death. So the ones who cried, who let themselves be seen, soft and shaking, were often the ones who were held, fed, guarded through the night, kept. You are descended from the criers, from the ones brave enough to let their faces fall apart in front of the people they loved, and to trust that those people would move toward them and not away. Their openness is in you. It is not a defect in your design. It is a feature, tested across 100,000 generations that kept your bloodline alive. So why does it feel like a defect now? Because the fire is gone. You do not live in a band of 50 who have known you since the day you were born. You cry in a parked car with the engine off, in a shower with the water running so no one hears, alone at 2 a.m. with a screen glowing on your face. Your body still fires the ancient flare, still sends up the signal that means come closer, help me, but there is no one across the fire to catch it. The message goes out perfectly formed into an empty room. And so a system built to summon your whole tribe now just makes you feel ashamed and even more alone than before. It gets worse, because we did not only lose the audience, we built a rule against the signal itself. You were told big kids don't cry. You were told to toughen up, to keep it together, to not make a scene, to save it for later. A whole culture quietly agreed that this 2-million-year-old survival tool is something embarrassing, something to strangle in your throat before anyone notices. And every single time you swallow it down, you are overriding one of the oldest and wisest instincts your species owns, and calling that self-control. So let me hand you something, gently. The next time your eyes sting and your throat closes and that old flare tries to rise, you do not have to fight it. It is not you falling apart. It is you doing the very thing that kept 100,000 generations of humans alive enough to make you. It is your body being honest in the one language that is older than words, older than names, older than the fire itself. And you were never designed to do it in a locked bathroom, muffling the sound, hoping it passes before someone knocks. You were designed to be seen doing it. So the next time your throat tightens and your eyes sting, don't look away. That is not weakness leaking out of you. That is the oldest signal your species has ever sent, asking, the way it always has, to not be carried alone.